أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم أخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وأكرمنا بنور الفهم وافتح علينا بمعرفة العلم وسهل أخلاقنا بالحلم واجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه اللهم اجعل أعمالنا خالصة لوجهك ولا تجعل فيها حظا لغيرك وصل اللهم على سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How's everyone today? You can unmute yourselves to respond. So I'm muted everyone, but
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Doing well, alhamdulillah.
Good to hear all the voices again. Alhamdulillah. Give me a second. Okay, so welcome back to Mizan. We find ourselves blessed to be back in our second year of study of the Arabic language, with the purpose and the main priority and the main purpose of understanding the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understanding the Quran, being able to engage with it, and truly taking it as the book of guidance in our life. Not just a book that we recite, but a book of guidance in our life. And as is the way of taught to us by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the way of our pious predecessors, we start by reminding ourselves of that intention. That me being here is not just me attending a class to keep my Sunday mornings busy or to satisfy any feeling that I have for upliftment, or no. The reason that I find myself in this class on a Sunday morning is because I want to attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to grow in my understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to, fully submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And yes, a plethora of benefits come with that in deen, dunya and akhirah. But that's my primary goal. That's my primary objective. It's just attaining the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So let's just take a moment to remind ourselves of that intention. You may have other good intentions as well. And you can just remind yourself of that good intention. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Actions are only what the intentions are. Or actions are only judged according to the intentions. So let's just take a moment and remind ourselves of our intention of being in this class. All right. So hopefully we frame our minds and our hearts in the right way. We remind ourselves of why we make this sacrifice on a Sunday morning. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let that motivate us week in and week out, day in and day out in this journey, so that even if we don't necessarily excel, but on account of our intention, Allah rewards us. There's a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you would have heard this before, in which he sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells us that if a person intends to do a good deed and he doesn't even do that good deed, Allah already gives him one full reward of that deed. So, and if he actually goes and executes the deed, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rewards him 10 times, up to 700 times, or even more than that. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our intentions and and actually use us for the service of his deen, and grant us that full submission to him so that we can attain all the good that comes therefrom. Right. Now I had to go into the whole intention thing because we're going to start off with me this year, not with the nice, enjoyable Quran study or tafsir. We're going to start off the year with me, inshallah, doing some more sarf. So hopefully that's enjoyable to everyone. What we can do is just to maintain interaction. I don't know if I must say one person must just keep their mic unmuted and talk to me, because otherwise it's almost like I'm teaching myself. But anyways, you guys are free to respond anytime. Just put your mic on. If there's going to be background noise, then obviously don't. But otherwise, you can put it on. In fact, if you want to as well, if you are sitting in a decent environment where there's not going to be like tons of movement and stuff like that, and you covered, etc., then you can put your video on also if you want to. I think it just creates a greater feel of being present amongst people. So you're welcome to do it. You don't have to. You're welcome to do it. Obviously, if you're lying in your bed or something, or you're still in your pajamas, maybe then don't do that. But otherwise, you're more than welcome. Right. So that's it. We're jumping back into sarf in that ayah.
Maulana, could I say something?
Yes, sure.
It was suggested that we should leave our the cameras on and
Yes.
just mute the sound. Is it a good idea? Do you want us to do that? Otherwise, sometimes it also causes interference the greater the number of cameras open.
Yes, I spoke to Maulana Khalil last night, and then we thought we would try it just to create a greater feel of actually being in a class. When cameras are off, etc., and you just it's easy to enjoy the class from the bed, etc., and doze off halfway in between and stuff like that. So we just thought that for those who want to, if you are sitting in a decent environment, like in a studious way, then you can put your camera on. And we thought we'd just trial it and see how it works in the class. If it does cause interference, we would ask for, for those cameras to be put off. But here we go. First one, Jazakallah khairan. Just ask Nana. Is Nana in the Quran class? This is the second year. Nana's on mute.
The Dora here, they said to me on my marker.
Okay, this is the second year class. The Dora link is right at the bottom of that page. I can send it to Nana on WhatsApp. Let me just see. Okay.
To my email.
Okay. Just give me a second. Just is the email bray.shah9567? Is that the email?
I'm not quite sure about the number.
But it is that one.
I'll try and go on to the other channel. All right.
No problem. All right, no problem. Oh, Nana, it's up to Nana if you want to be, inshallah. Okay. So back to that. So as we're just discussing, if you want to have your cameras on, mics muted, cameras on, just to create that classroom environment, you can do that. And we thought we'd just trial how what effect that has on the class and the experience. Okay, that's it. We're back into Sarf, right? Last year, you learned a number of different scales, right? We started off learning the Fa'ala scale, and we said that the Fa'ala scale it was a past tense scale. We learned the standard form Fa'ala, and then we learned how to change who was doing the action. We said Fa'ala meant he did, and then we went down a scale and we learned how to change who was doing the action. So we said Fa'ala means he did. Fa'alu means they, many males did. Then we had Fa'alat means she did. And then Fa'alna, they, many females did. And then we had Fa'alta, you, one male did. And then we had Fa'altum, you, many males did. Fa'alti, you, one female did. Fa'altunna, you, many females did. Fa'altu, I did. And Fa'alna, we did. So we learned that scale. Right? Thereafter, we didn't want to just change who was doing the action, but we actually wanted to change the action that was being done. So we learned about root letters, and we started learning the Fa'ala scale with different sets of root letters, like we have here on the screen in front of us, Daraba and Nasara. And we learned that sometimes the middle letter or the haraka on the middle letter could change, like in the case of Sami'a and Karuma and Hasiba. And you could go down all of those scales as well. Sami'a, Sami'u, Sami'at, Sami'na, Sami'ata, Sami'tum, Sami'ati, Sami'tunna, Sami'atu, Sami'na. I'm just running through all the concepts that we covered. So we started off with the Fa'ala scale. We changed the root letters. We learned that the haraka and the middle letter could change. Right? Then we moved on to the present tense scale. We learned the actual scale. يفعل, he is doing. يفعلون, they, many males are doing. تفعل, she is doing. يفعلن, they, many females are doing. تفعل, you, one male, are doing. تفعلون, you, many males are doing. تفعلين, you, one female, are doing. تفعلن, you, many females are doing. أفعل, I am doing. نفعل, we are doing. Then we went through the same process. We said that's changing who's doing the action, but we also want to change the action that's being done. And so we learned how to change the root letters on there. So we came up with yansuru, with yadribu, yansuru, yahsibu, yakrumu, yasma'u, etc. All of those different ones. And we saw therefrom that in the case of the present tense verb, the haraka on the middle letter could also change. Right? After we learned that concept, we basically covered the first two main scales of sarf. The past tense active form, and then we learned the present tense active form with various root letters. Right? That's where you paused with me. Thereafter, you took up sarf again with Maulana Khalil for a while. And when you took up sarf with Maulana Khalil, he taught you about the masdar. Right? He taught you about the name of the doer or the active particle. He taught you about the name of the done upon or the passive particle. Right? Those three things are all nouns, or there are ism in Arabic, asma. The masdar, the ismul fa'il, and the ismul maf'ul. Right? If you don't remember that, just give me a shout. Then you also learned the command form of the verb. If you don't want to say he did or he is doing, or you did or you are doing, but I want to tell you, do. You learned how to do that, converting the verb to the form if'al. But we also know that if'al also had a scale. You could say if'al, you do, or you could say if'alu to many people, all of you do, or you could say to a female if'ali, do, or to many females if'alna. Right? Is that correct? Or did you have the duals in there as well? Bismillah Irshad.
Assalamualaikum Malana. Hope Malana had a good holiday. Malana, clearly the holiday was too much for me. Could Malana please go over the stuff we covered with Malana Khalil just to refresh my memory on the master and that? I can't remember it right now. Shukran.
We're going to do that in a moment, inshallah.
Okay, shukran. Thank you.
Right? And then after learning the command form, you would have learnt the prohibition form, the nahi. Al-amr, command, and nahi, the negation, or sorry, not the negation, rather the prohibition. When I want to say, I don't want to negate, I don't want to say he didn't do something. I want to tell somebody, don't do it. Right? And you learn the form, la taf'al. And you would also have learned that that also has a scale beneath it. So you have la taf'al, or la taf'al, don't do. La taf'alu, to many males, don't do. La taf'ali, to many females, don't do. La taf'alna, to many females, don't do. Just a quick question from my side. When you learned that with Maulana Khalil, right? Did you include the dual forms in there? Or was it only the singular and plural?
Only the
singular and plural. Right. Okay. That's fine. That's perfectly fine, right? However, you must know also, just keep in the back of your mind, that in Arabic, everything has 3 levels of plurality, right? Singular, dual, and plural. We're omitting the dual forms just for sake of ease because their frequency is a lot less than any of the other forms, especially in the Quran, right? So that's the reason for which we omitted it, just to make things easier to memorize, but you must know that they do actually exist. Right. So all of these, we learned scales for all of these words. Fa'ala had a scale beneath it. Yaf'alu had a scale beneath it. If'al had a scale beneath it. And la taf'al had a scale beneath it. Now, one more question. Did you learn the passive forms of verbs? Anybody?
Can you give an example quickly?
An example of that would be, an example of that, excuse me?
Yansuru? Yunsaru.
Yes, that would be an example. An example of the passive form would be when I don't want to say he helped, rather I want to say he was helped or he is being helped, like nusira and yunsaru.
Yes, we did learn that one.
You did that as well, right? Okay, good. And all of those, they have scales formed exactly like the past tense of the passive form has a scale exactly like the past tense of the active form. The present tense of the passive form has a scale exactly like the present tense of the active form. The only difference is their middle letters don't change. It stays fu'ila and yuf'alu, right? So those are by and large the concepts you would have covered in Sarf last year, right? That's what you would have covered in Sarf last year. So I'm just gonna, so Irshad posed the question and he asked for me to relook at these concepts over here. Correct?
Please, Malana, just a quick refresher.
Right. So what is Sarf about? Sarf is, a lot about Sarf is about, formal changes or constant changes or forms that words take on. And what we're looking at is studying the meaning contained in the form of the word. Right? The meaning contained in the form of the word. Now, the idea that words or that forms have meaning applies to verbs, and it also applies to nouns, right? Sometimes words have, you get a masdar, right, which is a source word. It is a word that in and of itself has meaning. Then you get words that are derived from that word, right? Like the masdar here, which you would have learnt as, I think Mala Khalil told me that he called it a verbal noun. Right? You remember that word, a verbal noun?
Yes, Malana.
Right. So you call it a verbal noun, but there's an element of meaning that's lost when you just call it a verbal noun. Right? The word is al-masdar, al-masdar. And yes, that's correct. It ends with in. So like, for example, if I have the word fa'ala means to do, then fi'lun will mean doing. Or fa'alun will mean doing. But not in the sense of a present tense verb. It's just a verbal noun. But what I wanted to say is there's something about the meaning of that masdar that's lost when you just call it a verbal noun. The word that we use, the term that we use for it is masdar. What's the root letters of the word masdar? Let me see if you remember your nahu. What's the root letters of the word al-masdar?
Sadara.
Sadara. That's brilliant. Sadara. And the word sadara means to emit. It means to emit. Actually, the original meaning of the word sadara would be when you send someone to a water well. They go down to the water well to fetch water, and then when they come out, when they emit from there, when they come out, we call that sadara. And Allah uses that in the Quran. Hatta yusdira ri'a. When Allah speaks about the story of Musa alayhi salam, when he helped the daughters of Shu'aib alayhi salam. So the word sadara means to emit. Now, why we call this word the masdar? The masdar, because it's the point of emanation, or the point from which all meanings of this root letter come. So the fi'al, the past tense verb, is derived from the masdar. The fi'al mudari is derived from the masdar. The ismul fa'il is derived from the masdar. It's like the fountain from which all the derived forms, the words that have static forms, they all come from there. Now, that's not so obvious here, because if you look on this page, the examples that Maulana Khalil gave, they all have the same form. Okay, fi'alun, darbun, nasrun. Fi'al, you could actually change it to fa'al as well. Fa'alun is also one of the masadir of this word. But if you look at some other words, abada ya'budu, the masdar would be something like ibadatun. Rahima yarhamu will be something like rahmatun. So it's a different, you'll see that one is the word that doesn't have a set form. It doesn't just fit on a scale. It's the origin word. Other forms are derived from that now. So let me just look at this concept of the masdar again. It's a noun. It's a noun that conveys the meaning of the verb, so it's a verbal noun. It's also the root word, if you want. It's a word from which all the other derived forms come. And yeah, just to reiterate, it is a noun. Sometimes it may play or rather I should say it's an ism. Sometimes it may play the role of a fi'al, but in reality it is an ism. Right. Then we have the next one over here, ismul fa'il. That is the masdar. Now we're looking at the ismul fa'il. What's the ismul fa'il? The ismul fa'il is what a person that does the action is called on account of doing that action. A more technically correct term would be the active particle, right? If I were to, if everybody were good in English grammar, sometimes we know more Arabic grammar than we do know English grammar, but it's actually called the active particle. Or for all intents and purposes, for purpose of understanding, it's the name given to a person that does a specific action. So if a person helps, we can call him a helper. If a person hits, we can call him a hitter, for example. If somebody throws, we can call him a thrower. If somebody prays, okay, let me not use that one. If somebody witnesses something, we can call him a witness. It's breaking the pattern, but there is a name always given to somebody that does an action. Right? Now in Arabic, that happens in a fixed way. That happens in a fixed way. How does it happen? We don't just add something to the end of the word, a suffix like we do in English. Rather, we place the root letters in a specific mold, if you want. Right? And that mold is fa'ilun. Fa'ilun. Right? But remember, all of our molds in Arabic, what can you do with those molds? All of those templates, what can you do with them? You can take the root letters out and put other root letters there. Isn't that the case? We did that with all our verbs, and you can generally do that with everything in Arabic. So I take this form fa'ilun, and I through instruction I tell you that word fa'ilun is a name given to the person that does the action fa'ala. Right? So what will that mean? Fa'ala means to do. So this means a doer. Fa'ilun, a doer. And the same goes for the ismul maf'ul, except that the ismul maf'ul means the name given to a person to whom an action is done. Right? The name of the done upon. Or in other words, you could call that, in more correct terms, you could call that the passive particle. The name of the done upon. Right? So if somebody is helped, I can call him a helped person. If somebody is witnessed, I can call him a witnessed person. Or what's a better example of this? If somebody is hit, I can say he is the person that was hit. Now in Arabic, we have a single word to convey that meaning, and it falls on the template maf'ulun. So if, for example, person A helps person B, right? The word for help is nasara. Then I'll say person A is the nasir. We can call him, in this case, we can call him a nasirun on the form of ismul fa'il. Fa'ilun, nasirun. I'm just changing the root letters. And the person that was helped, person B, I can call him the mansurun. Mansurun. I just took the word maf'ulun and I replaced it with the root letters nasara. So that tells me person A is the nasir, person B is the mansur. Right? Those are nouns, very important. Those are nouns. Right? So we treat them like nouns, in that they can be masculine or feminine, singular, dual, plural, definite, indefinite, and they can have different hals. Right? Remember you learned those things in Nahu last year? You might have summarized them with the word jend. a noun will always have a gender, an encasing, there'll be a number, a plurality, and definiteness. Remember that?
Yes, Malana.
Okay. Is that clear now what the masdar, ismul fa'il, and ismul maf'ul are?
Perfect. Shukran, Malana. Thank you very much.
Okay. So just tell me quickly then. If I say Nasirun means a helper, how would I say two helpers?
Nasirani.
Nasirani, brilliant. And how would I say many helpers?
Nasiruna.
Right. And sometimes there may be other plurals as well, which you can find in your dictionary. Right? You know how to look for plurals in your dictionary?
Maulana, we know little, very little today.
Yeah, holidays can be destructive, but inshallah, everything will come. We'll do enough revision, inshallah. Okay, so how do you do? I'm just jogging your memory on all the stuff we did already, right? How do you find a plural in your dictionary? Firstly, I look for the root letters in my dictionary, right? In alphabetical order. Root letter number 1, root letter number 2, root letter number 3. The first word I come across is the verb. So if I look for the root letters nasara, the first word that I come across, let me just pull up a dictionary quickly. The first word that I come across is going to be the verb. Then beneath the verb, I'm going to see a whole lot of derived forms of the word. Let me just see. So yeah, I have my dictionary open in front of me. Can you see? I'm starting. Remember, we start on the side here. We actually start on the left, opposite to how we usually read Arabic books, because this is an English Arabic book. So the first word, this is noon sad ha ha. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for noon sad ra. Okay, I find that root letters. Noon sad ra. That's the first word. Spells out for me how to say the past tense verb nasara. It tells me how to pronounce the present tense by indicating to me a letter yansuru. In brackets next to it, it will tell me the masdar nasrun. As you can see on our thing here, we have that word, isn't it? Nasrun. Can you see that? Yes. There are other options as well. The word has other masadir, like here's another masdar for the word nasara. Nusurun. Nusurun is also can be an alternate masdar for this word. And then it gives me a whole lot of meanings. And also, just want you to note, afterwards you see a whole lot of numbers. Number 2, yes, number 3, number 5, number 8, number 10. Numbers, but in the Roman numerals. Right? What we're going to do in Sarfi is actually, we're going to learn about these Roman numerals. I'm just jogging your memory on all of these concepts. But what we're actually going to learn about are these Roman numerals. That's what I'm going to teach you in Sarf in the weeks ahead, inshallah. We're going to be learning about these Roman numerals. For now, we are just jogging our memory. Hasina, hand up. You may speak.
Mulana, you said masdar. Yes. I missed it because I was pasting something. Where is the masdar in that word, Nasara?
Okay. Let me just see. Let me just see something. Okay. If you see this word, we have the Nasara, that's just the letters. not what I wanted. Okay, so if you look over here, we have just the letters, right? Here we have how the past tense is said. Here we have how the present tense is said. Then this thing over here, in these brackets, that tells me the masdar. And you can see as a comma here. So that's telling me that's masdar number 1, and that's masdar number 2. Sometimes they spell it out for you. Because if I had just given you these letters, Noon, Sad, Waw, Ra, you could say that in a plethora of ways. You can say Nasurun, you can say Nusurun, you can say different things. Nusawiru, you can come up with a whole lot of potential things that sometimes don't even make sense. Right? So what they do is, next to it, they write out how it's pronounced as well. Nusurun. So there's masdar number 1, there's masdar number 2. And if we were to go to another verb, you'll see the same thing. Right? So again, like I said, I'm just jogging your memory on everything we learned last year.
Yeah.
What we actually, Bismillah, question?
No, I said perfect.
Okay. What we actually intend to focus on in this course is we're going to learn about the Roman numerals. And that's going to take us into learning a number of other scales. That's what we're going to focus on, inshallah. Okay, but that said, we want to see where we can find these different nouns now, the ismul fa'il, the ismul maf'ul. So if I go down, I look down the left-hand side here, I see slightly indented new words. Nouns now, not verbs any longer. Only the first word is the verb, and then the Roman numerals indicate to me all the other verb forms. But beneath that, I start getting nouns. So I have the first verb, nasrun. They only write nasr, but you understand that there's a dhammatain at the end. Nusratun, nasrani, nasraniyah, nasirun, an-nusayriyah, nasur. Those are all different words. Mansarun, tansirun, munasaratun, intisarun. Those are, I mean, the words here have a specific order, right? I'll tell you what the order of those words are, but not now. Those are all different types of masdars, but we'll learn about that in due time, inshallah. Then we have the word here that we're looking for. Can you see it? This, let me just see if I can. That word in nasirun. That's not so great. So here we have this word here. We just have the word, we just have the letters of the word. Nasirun. There's no harakat on the word. So it's so you should technically know how to say it, but next to the word, they spell it out for you. N, A, with a line on top to show you that you must pull it. S with a dot beneath it to tell you that it's actually a sod, and then IR, nasirun. And then next to it tells me PL, the plural, and then it gives me this UN, U with a line on top, N. What does that mean? Una. That UN just tells me that it can have a sound masculine plural. Remember that thing, sound masculine plural? Jam' mudhakkar salim. You would have learned it very early on in Nahu. You remember that?
Yes, Malana.
Yes,
Yes,
Malana.
Malana.
So the word is nasirun, the plural is going to be nasiruna. Nasiruna. But then you can see next to that there's a comma. And then we have some other words as well. Those are telling me alternate plurals for this word. ansarun, nussarun. Those are alternate plurals for the word. And if we now to go further down, we see the word ansar, we see the word an-nasira, we see the word nasiri, we see the word an-nasiriyya. Then we come across the word mansurun, mansurun. And that's the ismul fa'il form of the word. It's a noun that conveys the meaning of the done upon. Someone that is supported or aided, victorious, triumphant victor. Right? And the plural gets formed in the same way. You can say mansurun or mansurani. But remember, since it's a noun, it should have, whatever I want to say, a female that was out. How would I even say that? Or female helper.
Mansuratun.
Brilliant. You just added ta marbuta. So nasirun will become nasiratun. And the plural, nasirat. And mansur, you just added ta marbuta, mansura. Mansura. You added ta marbuta, and that's how you change it into a feminine form. Important to remember. These three over here, they are nouns. Right? They are nouns. Nasara, yansuru, unsur, la tansur, those are af'al, those are verbs. Okay. So I think that's clear. What you would have done last is you would have created exactly what we have on the board here on the screen, a summary of a verb, of a particular verb. Right? Remember, if you just recall, think back with me, when we were learning sarf, all that we had in front of us was that one scale, nasara. And we would go down the scale, nasara, nasaru, nasarat, nasarna, nasarta, nasartum, nasarti, nasartunna, nasartu, nasarna. And eventually we finished that scale. And then we would have in front of us only the present tense scale. Yansuru, yansuruna, tansuru, yansurna, tansuru, tansuruna, tansurina, tansurna, ansuru, nansuru. And eventually we finished that scale. And then we'd only have in front of us maybe the passive form scale. Nusira, nusiru, nusirat, nusirna, nusirta, nusirtum, nusirti, nusirtunna, nusirtu, nusirna. And then when we finish that scale, we would only have the present tense passive form in front of us. Yunsaru, yunsaruna, tunsaru, yunsarna, tunsaru, tunsaruna, tunsarina, tunsarna, unsaru, nunsaru. And then when we finish with that scale, we'd only have the command form in front of us. Unsur, unsuru, unsuri, unsurna. And when we're finished with that, we'd only have in front of us the negation, or the prohibition rather, sorry. La tansur, la tansuru, la tansuri, la tansurna. We just have that scale in front of us. But then we said, well, I have a number of individual scales there, and I can go down each of these scales. But how can I make a summary of the scale such that I can just go across almost the first words in each of those scales? And we came up with this form that we have here. Nasara yansuru, nasrun, nasirun, mansurun, unsur, la tansur. Unsur, la tansur. Now, you did that last year, right? That would have been like one of the last things that you did in Sarf.
Yes, Mulana.
Brilliant. You will notice in here that we omitted the passive forms. We omitted the passive forms. Now, in classical, and we omitted the passive forms because the passive forms get they always get formed in exactly the same way. Right? So we omitted them because you can figure them out. Right? You can figure them out. And it makes the scale easier to learn. But what we would call this in classical Arabic learning, we call this the sarf saghir. The sarf saghir, the small sarf. It's basically summaries of words. Right? And for our intents and purpose, we're going to call it going across as opposed to going down, like we did with each of those individual scales. We can go down the scale. Yeah, we're going to call it going across. So I want you to say this with me. We'll take the verb daraba and just go across with me. Now, before we do that, as it was part of the tradition of how people learned the Arabic language, the sarf saghir, that included these nouns, because these nouns are also derived forms. That's why we put them in there. So we didn't just leave the verbs; we added these nouns in. But I want you to say the daraba scale with me. Maybe one of you can have your mic on, but everybody say it at home. Right? 1, 2, 3, go. ضرب يضرب ضرب ضارب مضروب اضرب لا تضرب. Again. ضرب يضرب ضرب ضارب مضروب اضرب لا تضرب. Let's do نصر. نصر ينصر نصر ناصر منصور انصر لا تنصر. Again. نصر ينصر نصر ناصر منصور انصر لا تنصر. And that's our sarf saghir, or going across the scale, as a summary of that scale. Are there any questions on that quickly? No. Any questions? Okay, it doesn't seem like it.
Maulana,
Okay,
you see, I can see Nasara, right? The last one, the Amr, the command, is become unsur. But if I look at fa'ala, it becomes if'al. Can you remind me why that is unsur and that one is if'al?
Okay.
How can I
Good
remember it? How can I learn it?
Okay. How you can learn it, right? You must remember firstly that the amr is taken from the present tense form of the verb. And then you must remember that the present tense, the harakat on the second root letter can change. Sometimes it can be it can be it can be u. Yaf'alu, yadribu, yansuru. Now, if it's a fatha or a kasra, then in the amr form, it's going to start with an i. But if it's a dhamma, then the amr is going to start with a dhamma.
Jazakallah. I remember this now.
It's connected to that.
Maulana, do we need to know the scale across as well as we know the scale down?
You should try.
Okay.
Because why you should try is actually we're going to do a lot of it. I have this PDF open in front of me. You guys would have received this PDF as well, right? If you go through the PDF, you're going to find we're learning a whole lot more scales. Those scales, we're not going to learn them down. We're just going to learn them across. Right? Because, we did the hard work of going down scales already with the first scale. So now, for the other scales, we're only going to learn them going across, but they go down in exactly the same way. Right? So we will have a lot of practice of going across scales from now. In fact, when we want to reference things in verbs, we'll mostly focus on going across. So inshallah, you will become accustomed to that. It's not something to break your head in about. I know oftentimes in our classes, and I'm making a generalization here, oftentimes the ladies especially, they get anxious because they don't know this as well as they know the original scale. Don't worry about it. It's just, the important thing is to have the structure in your mind, like the structure of these headings: past tense, active, present tense active, masdar, Ismul fa'il, ismul maf'ul, command, prohibition. And it's good to have a structure in mind. And then we'll read it initially, but eventually, inshallah, you will become accustomed to that a lot more. You will become accustomed to that. So yes, I don't want to downplay it. It is important to know. If you can know it as good as you know the other scales, that's brilliant. You're going to do a lot of repetition of it with different verb forms, and so hopefully that will help in making you accustomed to going across scales. Uncle Abbas?
Yes. We did the verb scales repetitively, in parrot form. So we learned that. We didn't do that with the nouns.
Yes.
So you're basically saying we need to know it in the same way.
No. So the nouns, right? We learned the nouns conceptually, how to, because in the noun forms, it's not really scales, man. It's just levels of plurality. Nasirun, Nasirani, Nasiruna. It's just plurality. So you learned that as a concept in Nahu. So for the nouns, you don't necessarily have to be able to go down the scales. It's just those three words in essence.
Okay, shukran.
The verb, going down the verb scales is important. The nouns, really, you can just form them through the concept that you learned in Nahu. Uncle Muhammad Amin? Okay.
The English forms of the meanings of these words, I sometimes struggle with the verbal nouns and the maf'ulun bi, just how to pronounce it or which words to use.
I would say number one, really, don't worry about it. Every time I teach it, a different word comes to my mind because there are alternate words to use for them. So I will use, just for standardization in class, I'm going to refer to the masdar as the verbal noun. I'm going to refer to the ismul fa'il as the name of the doer. I'm going to refer to the ismul maf'ul as the name of the done upon. There's many other words I could have used instead of that, like active particle and passive particle, but really just I'm going to use that for standardization. And it doesn't really matter. What we want from you is that you understand the concept. This is the noun that I use to refer to a person that does an action or a person that an action was done to. That's sufficient. Uncle Muhammad Amin?
Yes, Maulana, assalamu alaikum. I just thought now, one of the ladies asked about the words, if you need to remember the words downwards, right? Especially the first one that connects with the numeral. And I mean, if you look at the first one and you see the first one is number 1, right?
Okay, Uncle.
No, what I say is I don't want to jump the gun now. So it's all right. I rather keep quiet and let you explain. It's all right. Okay, Maulana.
Okay, not that I just don't want people to be overwhelmed by all the other numerals yet.
Oh, I see.
That just now people start getting more anxious already. No. Just first focus on.
I just wanted to say, if you look at all the numbers and the numbers you're going to teach us, no problem, because I mean it follows in line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just Roman. But the word fa'ala and the different one is whether it was a tajdeed on and so on and so on. If you can connect the one fa'ala and the 2 with the other one and the 3 with the other one, that will give you the indication on the line that you must learn. That's what I want to say.
Yes. Okay. But for now, I want the class to not focus too much on that, right? That's 100% what Uncle is saying. It's good and correct. But I don't want people to become overwhelmed. We're busy with number 1. All that we're doing now is going across, right? Nasara yansuru, nasrun, nasirun, mansurun, and then unsur, la tansur. We're focusing on going across the scales. We're going to get to the Roman numerals in due course. So I have a question here, Maulana. What does MazeedFeehi mean? I joined late, so maybe I missed it. If I did. You didn't miss it. I didn't explain it. The reason I didn't explain it yet is because what we are dealing with is not yet MazeedFeehi. What we are dealing with is not yet MazeedFeehi. Inshallah, once we pass this scale, then we will go on to MazeedFeehi. What we call this first lesson is actually what we call Sarf Saghir, the small sarf. Small sarf. What it means is it's just a summary of a sarf scale by going across rather than down each of the scales. Right? Is that clear? If that's clear, then what I want you to do for homework is you will have received this this pack of pages from Allah Khalil. What I want you to do is page number 1. You have page number 1 here and page number 2. All that I want you to do is populate the fields below. So I think you did a similar kind of homework last year. So you have the word abadaya. I want you to go and look in your dictionary how to say the present tense of it. So it's going to be abada ya'budu. And then the masdar you're going to look in your dictionary. It's probably going to be ibadatun. And then you're going to form the ismul fa'il, abidun. And the ismul maf'ul, ma'budun. And the amr is going to be u'bud. And the nahi is going to be la ta'bud. So I want you to fill that in. Right? And I want you to write the meanings of them. So abada will be he worshipped. Ya'budu, he is worshipping. Ibadatun, worshipping. Abidun, a worshipper. Ma'budun, an object of worship or a thing that is worshipped, or a deity if you want. U'bud, worship. La ta'bud, do not worship. That's how I want you to fill in the Arabic and the English going across. Right? And do that for me for pages number 1 and page number 2. That's our homework, right? And then next week, inshallah, we'll move on to al-MazeedFeehi. This week, in reality, is Sarf Saghir. Next week, we'll move on to al-MazeedFeehi. Is that fine?
Yes, Maulana. Maulana, just one thing I can remember is there the heading Ismul Fa'il. Doesn't it end with a kasra there on the last letter?
Brilliant. That's correct. Yes, that's a typo in the book. It must have a kasra. Why? It's a mudafun ilayhi construction. Brilliant. I see that's right through. It's supposed to be ismul fa'ili, so you can change that in your texts. Right through. All right, jazakumullahu khairan. So your homework for next week is populate or fill in pages number 1 and 2, inshallah. And then next week we can go through this, revise it, check if there's any questions, and then move on to al-MazeedFeehi bi-idhnillahi ta'ala.